If you are passionate about your pet's health and you would like to learn how you can support your pet's health naturally and holistically, today's episode is dedicated to you and your beloved pets. Dr. Ruth Roberts is with us today. She is America's most loved pet health coach. She has supported thousands of dogs and cats overcome major health issues like kidney disease, GI illness, allergies, and even the big C. Her natural approach to healing creates a gentle yet effective path for your pet to take on their journey to well-being. Dr. Ruth created the original Crock Pet Diet, a balanced home cooked diet for pets as a foundation of health. If you would like your pet to live longer, stick around because we're going to learn why Dr. Ruth Roberts is your pet's #1 best ally. Welcome to C60 Health Connections, where we meet with leading experts who can elevate performance in all aspects of your life. Today, we are diving into the topic of holistic and natural care for your beloved furry family members. And I'm not talking about any people who wear a costume. We are talking about your pets: dogs, cats, horses, pigs, bunnies, birds, etc. My name is Jessica McNaughton, and I am the CEO at shopc60.com and C60 Purple Power. Now, before we get started, any statements, products, or topics discussed today have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Anything we discuss is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, mitigate, or prevent any disease. With that, we'll get right into it. Ruth, so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me and Peaches as we dive into the topic of holistic health.
Jess, I am so delighted to be here and so glad Peaches could make it too.
Peaches has, already gotten to know you a little bit because she's been using your product, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, in addition to C60 for pets. But Ruth, if you could maybe just give us a little bit of background on you and how you became an expert in holistic pet care.
Like many doctors, it took me getting really sick to learn that conventional medicine it's not good for chronic disease. And so it took me getting sick to find another way to solve my own health problems. And part of that was really changing my diet away from the standard American diet of highly processed foods. And as I saw myself getting better, I'm thinking, why is it we're feeding this stuff to dogs and thinking that's going to keep them healthy? And so as I learned more and more, I was studying Chinese medicine at the time and acupuncture, herbs, things like that. They were huge proponents of food therapy at the Chi Institute in Reddick, Florida. And so I had a dog that had a horrible bacterial infection in her heart valve. And this is something that normally kills dogs. I mean, it's just a horrible disease. Thankfully, we got her through the bump. And my teacher said, start cooking for her. And I'm thinking, I don't have anything else to lose, and neither does Nepenthe. And so I did. She did not want anything to do with acupuncture needles. She loved the home cooked food. She ate the herbs within it. And she lived another 4 years with from this disease that should have killed her within a month or so. So that was a huge, huge lesson for me that what I'd been taught to say just wasn't right.
That's such an amazing story. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition and your pets. It sounded like, the Crock Pet Diet was kind of birthed out of this experience. Is that correct?
It was. That was the first incarnation of it, if you will. And the thing that happened shortly thereafter was the first major pet food recall in 2007. And so I was, teaching my clients how to cook, and people were literally walking in off the street to get this recipe because they didn't know what to trust. Every week, another brand of food was recalled. And what happened was all of these pets that had GI issues, itchy skin, all these chronic problems, they had cancers, all this stuff, they started getting better. And that was the only big change, was what they were feeding their pets.
Will you give us a little bit of an education on what are the typical ingredients in conventional pet foods, whether it's the kind that you can get, at your big box pet store or even from your veterinarian? Like what are the ingredients that people should have an awareness of that maybe they're not even thinking about that are contributing to these frequent recalls?
Well, part of it, the recalls are there's kind of two issues there, but sadly, the main two ingredients in the majority of pet foods, especially sadly the ones at the veterinary office, are chicken and corn. And it's highly processed corn that's in a powder, and then it's chicken bits, so things that would probably horrify most of us if we actually saw what they looked like. So even the really high quality, expensive foods that are supposed to be grain free and things of this nature, the protein sources are somewhat better and they're more varied, but they're all extremely high in carbohydrates. So 65, 75% carbohydrate. And for an omnivore, that's a little tough, even for us humans, if it's in processed form. And for cats, it's just absolutely the wrong thing to feed them. So it's a lot of it is the meat meals or, God knows what. They're things that are not fit for human consumption, clearly, but they're also, they're things that nobody should be eating. So it's just really, really yucky stuff.
So what do we need to understand? Like, I'm curious, what are the must know components um, that we as just like common people who don't have a background in pet health and nutrition really need to understand in order to support our pets' health naturally?
So I think one of the things you can do, and there's a raging debate. I should back up and say that there's a raging debate about raw food being the only way to go, and that's what you'll hear from most holistic veterinarians. The problem is that dogs and cats in the United States already eat almost 30% of the animal proteins that are produced here. And this is a huge problem from a sustainability standpoint. The the other thing is that I would argue that dogs evolved with us, and then we were cooking 30,000 years ago. So they came along eating what we were eating, or our garbage rather, and then our leftovers, and then finally what we were feeding them. So that is important to remember. There's a lot of the raw folks that'll say, dogs can't digest carbohydrates. Well, they can. They don't have salivary amylase because they gulp their food, but they do have pancreatic amylase to digest the starches. And Hio wants to come help.
Oh,
Um,
hi.
she's like, oh, so that's one of the things that sort of differentiates the way I try to teach people about cooking. And I really believe that home cooking is the best option for our dogs and cats. It's sustainable. It's already sort of pre-digested, if you will, so that it's presented to the pet's digestive system in a way that's really easy to further break down and assimilate. So it's just been it's made a super big change. But if you're looking at a bag of pet food, start reading. And what you're going to see is maybe meat's the first, but maybe it's the third ingredient. And likely what you'll see is a carbohydrate, some meat, carbohydrate, meat, carbohydrate, and so on and so forth. And that's how you can recognize that the food is super high in carbohydrates. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so what I understand you're saying is that that's just not natural for pets at all. They weren't designed and they haven't evolved to consume such a significant amount of carbohydrates.
Exactly. Well, and especially in processed forms. So, I
Okay.
mean, we can debate about, whether people should eat that much or not. And for some folks, it's great. For some folks, it's not. But none of us should be eating basically the equivalent of Doritos all the time.
Right. Okay. So can you talk to us a little bit about pet gut health? Like, do we need to be concerned about our pet's gut health?
Absolutely. It, it's really frustrating because when I was finishing veterinary school in 1990, they said, if your client's just not happy with the solution you've given them, then just give them a little amoxicillin. It's not going to hurt them, and it's not a big deal. And unfortunately, that antibiotic amoxicillin is going to alter the gut microbiome, but we had no idea about that. So what's happened with these guys is they get antibiotics, they get pesticides, often orally in the form of flea control. They are spayed and neutered very early in life, and that alters how their intestinal that alters how their intestines are able to respond appropriately and house the appropriate microbiome. And what we've been finding is that, especially because we've neutered and spayed all of our pets somewhere around 6 months of age, is that they are producing an excessive amount of luteinizing hormone. And as a result, many of the tissues, including the intestines, are creating luteinizing hormone receptors. And that is a big part of why we're seeing such an epidemic of inflammatory bowel disease and syndrome in dogs and cats. So it is absolutely critical to make sure that we're getting the right food in to support the microbiome, and then using probiotics and other supplements to support the gut function. Just like in us, if the gut's not working right, the rest of the body is not going to work right.
For those of us who already have a dog or a cat that's been spayed or neutered, it's a little bit too late to go back and, adjust that timeline. However, if you're thinking about getting a puppy or adopting a new pet who hasn't been spayed or neutered, can you give us a little bit of insight on what's the appropriate timeline to do the spaying or neutering if you know you don't want to have puppies, and you're not even quite sure how to deal with that scenario? Can you talk to us a little bit about when that timeline might be appropriate and why?
So, I think from the research, if you can wait until 5 years or even longer to spay or neuter, that would be the best. It's difficult to do that in our current society. And so, for instance, boarding kennels, daycares, things of that, places like that will not accept pets that are intact because of insurance issues. So I encourage people to let female dogs go through at least 2 heat cycles, and let male dogs and cats get up to at least a year of age before they spay and neuter. And that is really, it's a difficult thing. And if you are adopting from a shelter or from a rescue, you really won't have that choice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what about gut health? What do you recommend? What do we need to be looking at? Are you talking about probiotics, prebiotics? What types of supplementation should we be seeking out in order to help support that healthy gut biome?
So I think one of the things that's super important is if you're feeding a cooked diet with a lot of vegetables, you're going to have a terrific amount of fiber, and that's going to help sustain the microbiome because it's providing prebiotic fibers there. I also advocate the use of beans in the diet, because the fiber source is just fantastic to support the microbiome. And then I do recommend using some sort of a probiotic. More recently, I've been using sporulated probiotics because they seem to be able to actually get to the colon sort of unscathed by the digestive process and do the pet a whole lot of good. But I think that there's the probiotics I would avoid are the ones that are in like flavored chews, because generally the dosage is so low they're not effective. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, that definitely does. So that's interesting because you'd said that they've got some issues. The pets that have been spayed or neutered early on have some issues with inflammatory bowel issues, and beans do not trigger that or activate it. They're actually can dogs digest beans? That's like new news to me.
Well, they can digest beans, but you're right. If they have existing GI issues, that's definitely not the first thing to start with, because
Okay.
they can be, And that's the thing too, is that if there are existing GI issues, I generally encourage my clients and my crock pet community to go really slow introducing the diet, because that big increase in fiber can really make it uncomfortable for the pet. So yeah, it's one of those things you have to really know your dog or your cat as you start to add these things in.
Okay. So for people that are, short on time, concerned about, finances, how do they transition into cooking for their pets? Are you recommending they cook, a large amount of food up front and then freeze it? Or like, just can you talk us through the process?
How
Like, how
does
do
it
we get
work?
started? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, it seems like, oh my God, I never cook for myself. How am I going to
Ex-
cook for my dog? Well, when when my wife and I met, we had 5 dogs and 5 cats, and we could knock out food for a month in about 4 hours. So yes, freezing is your friend. And generally, what I would suggest doing is figure out what 5 days of food would look like. How much volume wise is that? And then freeze your food in 5 day aliquot. So you could make a couple of weeks worth of food fairly quickly. And the reason I'm saying 5 days is because that's about as long as you want it to be in the refrigerator. We don't want it to go bad because it is fresh food.
Let's talk about pets and anxiety. A lot of people deal with anxious pets, dogs or cats or, otherwise. Can, shifting what you feed your pets help balance out the pet's emotional health?
Absolutely. And and so again, we know that the microbiome produces something like 90% of our neurotransmitters, and it's the same for dogs and cats. And the other thing is back to that luteinizing hormone thing. Guess where the other receptors start popping up in the brain? And so this is associated with increased anxiety, aggression, and as pets age, with cognitive dysfunction as well. So everything we think of for us, so improving the function of the microbiome, having an anti inflammatory diet, using high doses of omega 3 fatty acids and a few other supplements, that's going to help reduce anxiety. There's a boatload of really awesome natural options out there, including tryptophan, theanine. Assisi makes a pulsed electromagnetic frequency loop called a canine calmer that's just done amazing things for Hio. I mean, there's just so many options out there, but it is truly an epidemic of anxiety, and especially to thunderstorms. I mean, that's just gotten so intense for these guys.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple solutions outside of the food, including PMF. Are there any that are your absolute favorite kind of go-to that you'd recommend if you've got a pet who is, clearly high strung, freaking out on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I would use, for instance, for Hio. I mean, this poor dog. We moved to Mexico, and they love fireworks, and she's like just about to come out of her skin. So we used CBD, which I think is marvelous. You may have to use it. For instance, she takes almost 18 milligrams total through the day. Um, she used the canine calmer loop. We had already been working on her gut, but those two things really were kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. And I think the other thing that that we've just started Hio and our cat Pepe on C60, but I think that will end up helping as well, because it will help to get rid of some of that excess hormone, I believe, and help filter that out of the system. So that would be a wonderful addition as well, because a lot of it is just garbage running around the system that's creating a lot of the anxiety for these
Yeah.
guys.
Does exercise support, if you're helping your dog get regular exercise to, kind of burn off some of that anxiety? Is that like a critical component, like whether it's daily walks or, fetch or some kind of games for your pets to play?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing. If we're not walking her 3 times a day, her anxiety level goes up. And dogs want to learn, they want to perform well. So if you can create sort of a job for your dog, whether that's going outside with you and looking for some object you've hidden or doing some sort of a game in the house. If you keep them occupied, that's going to shift their brains into a more positive train of thought, so to speak.
Let's talk about pets and allergies. What can we do about pets having allergies?
And again, this is the other place where spaying and neutering unfortunately doesn't help us. But again, if you're following that idea of improving the microbiome and using really pretty substantial doses of omega-3 fatty acids, you can use things like quercetin and stinging nettles to actually help reduce the itchiness. I think that will begin to make a massive change for a lot of pets. We've had several clients that were able to wean their pets off of Apoquel and some of these other really nasty medicines just by changing diet and using quercetin and nettles for the symptoms, for the itchies, and frequent baths using things like apple cider vinegar rinses. The other thing that's really interesting too is that there's kind of a cross component between itchy dogs and anxious dogs. And so if we start solving the anxiety component, a lot of times the allergy component starts to improve.
Mm-hmm. If your dog's on Apoquel, you said wean them off. Do you actually have to wean your dog off of it?
And so it's not like prednisone, where if they've been taking a lot of prednisone for a while and you stop it, it creates physiologic issues.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more the idea that we don't re-invoke those symptoms where they're just tearing themselves to shreds.
Yeah.
So that's why I mean wean off, so we don't have a disaster happen.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. So, you've also helped animal pet owners recover their pets from the big C. I'm not going to, you guys can, you know what C is. I'm not going to say it because of this channel. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the strategies and natural methods that you've used to help pets recover from big C?
Sure. So like humans, the keto diet has been very helpful for many pets. So that's a really high fat, extremely low carbohydrate diet. Obviously, if a pet has ever had pancreatitis, that's not a good option because of the high fat component. I think, just going from kibble to whole foods again, that's always the most important step. Again, working on microbiome, because if we control the inflammation that's being produced there, that helps to prevent the system from missing out on things it shouldn't. I guess that's a good way to say it. And then also using super high doses of omega-3 fatty acids. And it's kind of like that's the fix for everything, but it's kind of the basis for everything. If we can reduce inflammation in chronic disease, then we can solve a lot of the problems. So there are those things. And then in terms of Chinese medicine, we'll use herbs that are very strongly moving, so frankincense and myrrh, to help keep the blood moving, so to speak. And actually in Chinese medicine, that's the goal of it. And then to reduce stagnation. And so that's the concept of how these problems kind of begin. Things stick where they shouldn't, they stagnate. And then, so if we get things moving, that helps tremendously. And there's a myriad of other options, mushrooms, gosh, the list is just enormous. So there's a ton of different options. And again, CBD is very helpful. I think C60 would be tremendously helpful as well. So yeah, it's just, you have to kind of look at the pet and where they are. Because what I tend to see is that clients will be like, oh my God, this horrible thing is going on. And they rush out and buy, 30 different supplements. And then the poor pet is eating more supplements than actual food. So I think it's important to start with basic stuff, make sure your pet's feeling well, eating well, and then layer things in as it's appropriate.
That sounds like great, practical, common sense advice. So thank you for grounding us in that. Now, you and I met just a few months ago, and I was absolutely blown away by what you told me. And that was that you have created an online program that that basically coaches and trains regular people who aren't, who don't have a background in veterinarian medicine about how to become a holistic pet health coach, because there's a lot of people that I know who are extremely passionate about their pets. Like, their pets are their kids, their pets are their entire world, and they would do anything for their pets. There's a lot of people that fall in that category. And unfortunately, like, we just don't know all the information that exists in order to support these pets with longevity and healthy, happy, allergy-free lifestyles. So, can you talk to us a little bit about your program, why you created it, and how people can access it? We're going to pop up all of your contact info. We'll put it in the show notes. We're going to put your link here. But when you told me this, my mind was absolutely blown, because I think this is such a gift to anybody who loves their pet. It is such a huge gift, because you're coaching people on how to do exactly what we're talking about today, to address the gut health issues, to support with healthy nutrition, and to weave in some natural herbs and remedies that can really support elevating the pet's experience on the planet here, with all of the environmental factors that we know are impacting not only humans, but our pets as well.
Right on. So, I mean, a lot of this is born out of the fact that I could not understand what was going on with my colleagues in the post-COVID world. And then finally, I ran across an article in the Atlantic and about the veterinary shortage, and truly there is one. So essentially what happened is, as COVID hit, anybody that was my age and older, so 55 and up, were like anywhere close to retirement age, they're like, I'm out of here. And so that
They
created a
just took
huge,
early retirement during COVID.
yeah,
Okay.
boom, they were gone. And then the other thing is that veterinary medicine we pay our staff deplorably low salaries. And veterinary technicians, veterinary assistants, they're like, you know what? I really love animals, but I really don't like this job, and I can make more money working at McDonald's for $15 an hour. And it's just, I mean, and veterinary medicine is so expensive
Yeah.
to you, the pet parent. In defense, when I sold my practice, it cost me $90,000 a month to break even, to pay two veterinarians and a staff of 12, buy the inventory, all of that stuff. So it's really, but the problem is that during COVID, the service just went in the toilet. Anybody that had any sort of complicated problem with their pets were being told to just euthanize them right away. And they're just, yes, they're ill, but they can enjoy these next several months and sometimes years of life with appropriate support. So what I realized is, and I love doing consultations one-to-one, but I'm one person. And if I can train 30, 40, 50, 100 people how to be pet health coaches, then so many more people and their pets can be helped. I think if we looked at health coaching on the human side, that has had such a massive impact on the quality of life that people experience, because they're stepping away from, the rotating door of the doctor's office and the pharmacy. The doctor makes more money if they write scripts. And, the same has happened in veterinary medicine as well. So that was my goal, is to make it easier for people to access rational thinking as far as health goes for their pets, and holistic options.
I love that. Making it easier to access rational thinking as it relates to their pets. Thank you. That's great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the program. What is the link? Where do we go? Where do we go to sign up for your program?
So if you go to holisticpethealthcoach.com, I think that'll circle around to where you need to go. But basically, what the program is a 4-month program, and I'll be teaching people first off, how to make a business out of this, because that's important. I mean, the education is great, but if it doesn't sustain you as a new career move, then I haven't served you well. And then what we'll be doing is walking through concepts of functional medicine, traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, and then kind of our physiologic understanding of disease, and then incorporating all three of those and into understanding how to support pets with challenges, for instance, with liver, kidney, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the big focuses is teaching people how to use the original Crock Pet diet, which is my home cooked pet food recipe system, basically, and how to adjust it for pets, how to support, especially pets with gut health issues, how to create a rotation and elimination diet. And so all along, you'll have, it'll be a pre-recorded materials for the course, but you'll have access to a mentor with a weekly call. And then I'll also be doing weekly coaching calls with the entire class to answer questions, help solve problems, help them sort of be able to use and apply the material more quickly.
Okay, so who would be a great candidate for this program? I know you mentioned, vet techs are pivoting and some of them are becoming restaurant workers because they want to make more money. But you don't have to be a vet tech, correct? You can be just a pet owner, right?
Exactly. And
Okay.
that's exactly it. I mean, there are two women in this next class that will be starting September 1st that are pet owners, but they have had to do all the research to help support their pets because their vets weren't able to give it to them. And so if that is your forte, is figuring something out, this is a course for you. And if your passion is in supporting pets and helping others not get into the situation your pet got into,
Mm-hmm.
this is the course for you, because your true desire is going to shine right through in everything you say and do around this.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily want to turn this into a business, like you're just interested in solving your own pet's issues, are you still a good candidate, or do you need to have kind of like the desire to help people outside of the community?
No, if what you want to do is to be able to support your pets long term, this is a great option. And at some point down the road, I'll be developing a course specifically just for pet owners, but this will be an incredibly deep drill down into many facets, many different options as far as supporting pets goes.
And will you talk to us a little bit about this product that you've created too?
Sure. So, uh, so holistic total body support is a multivitamin and mineral. It is one of the few on the market that will actually balance any diet, whether that's raw, cooked food. You can also use it with pre-prepared food. So it's also sort of up leveled the important nutrients for pets that are chronically stressed, or for instance, our pets that are anxious.
Mm-hmm.
They're burning through B vitamins like crazy, and zinc and things of that nature. But more importantly, it also includes glands that will help support their endocrine systems and help bring some of the issues from having been spayed and neutered early in life back under control. So that's part of the goal there. It just is it's a perfect supplement for anybody. The wonderful thing is because it is beef flavored, it is extremely palatable. And so almost every dog and cat I've come across really, really enjoy eating it on top of the food.
Yeah, I put a little bit of this on my dog's food with some C60, and she literally licks the bowl clean when she's done. So she loves it. Where can people find this? Do they need to just go to your website?
drruthroberts.com and click on shop. It'll be there.
And how much does your 4-month program cost?
So the cost of the program is right at $5,000, and that is a very serious investment. But part of the investment will also give you access to ongoing coaching after the program, and we'll be creating a page on our website to refer people for consultations to you. So
Okay.
we want to continue supporting your business too.
So if people want to learn directly from you, part of this program offers, they're going to have that one-on-one time with you to get answers directly from you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. This has been such an awesome conversation. I've learned so much, Dr. Ruth. Thank you so very much for your time today. Do you have any kind of parting words of wisdom or inspiration for our listeners who are struggling with, any pet issues, whether it's disease or allergies or anxiety, any kind of any final thoughts for them for us to lead with or to end with today?
So one of the things is we get caught up in the thing, the big problem, and that's where we keep our focus, and we forget to take time to sit and breathe and love on our pets. And I think they are nourished when we turn off all the dings and bings and bops and sit and stay present with them completely. So if that's not a habit you're doing with your pet, I really, really encourage you to do it because they will be happier. You'll be happier. You're going to have at least 3 minutes in your day where you're just sitting and breathing and loving that being that supported you so much.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think that's a really, really beautiful reminder. Thank you so much. Peaches would like to thank you too, because you've been supporting her on her health and wellness journey. And we both appreciate how much we've learned from you over the last couple of months. So thank you so much for all the great work you're doing on the planet to help pet owners support our pets being their highest and best.
Amen. And Jess, thank you for all you're doing as well. The product you've created is astonishing, and plus you're getting all this information out for people to learn and prosper.
Thank you so much. We will be talking to you soon. Ruth, thanks for such a great conversation.
With pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and share this video with somebody who can benefit from this information. If you would like to try Carbon 60 for pets, please visit shopc60.com and use the code the C60 show for 10% off your first order. Thanks so much.